Well, this is a perfect segue. Well, thank you for everybody that has dialed in. Thank you to our phenomenal panelists we have on the line today. We promise we'll talk about more than taxes and recorders, although I can't guarantee it. So for those of you that are just turning into YOUniverse, we have had an amazing 3 days filled with fun that was centered all around YOUU. So, here at Alice, we really believe that we are entering this new era of business, if you will, one that really prioritizes people's 5 to 9 interests and what makes them tick and what motivates them as individuals, in addition to what their 9 to 5 responsibilities or titles might tell you about themselves. And we really believe that in order to deliver bonds with your customers or your partners or your prospects, whomever you're trying to cultivate a business relationship with, you really need to be delivering this concept of personal experience, or PX like we call it, to create moments that are relevant, relatable, and respectful for that end audience member. And so now I'm super excited that day 4 of YOUniverse is all about bringing PX into marketing. So these are my people. I'm excited for day 4. This is finally when the marketers get to shine. And, really today is all about putting personal in play, and it's really rethinking a new approach to demand generation. And I'm joined with some seriously heavy hitters when it comes to the marketing and demand gen and marketing ops space. But before I dive into that, just a couple of housekeeping items. First and foremost, for all those that ask, yes, we will record this, and yes, you will get a copy. As soon as YOUniverse wraps up, we'll email that right out to you folks. Secondly, we are going ahead and disabling the chat and then opening it up in the last 15 minutes of today's session. So around 2:15, we'll go ahead and open that up for all the attendees to leave their questions or comments for panelists. And then last but not least, we've just turned off videos and mics and chat just so we can stream as well as possible. So everything is working as expected. Nothing's broken if you're not seeing anything in terms of engagement right now. So in the spirit of celebrating people's 9 to 5 to 9s, in addition to their 9 to 5 responsibilities, I would love to introduce who we have on the line today. So up first is the incredible Elle Woulfe. Most of you might know her as VP of Growth Marketing at InVision. And most of you probably also know that she has this amazing collection of chicks, soon to be chickens, in her house. Elle, thank you for joining us today. Anything else you would like to share about what makes your 5 to 9 tick outside of raising those beautiful chickens?
Well, as you said, one thing I've learned very quickly is that chicks become chickens basically overnight. No, not much. My background's in demand gen and marketing ops. I've worked in MarTech for a long time at Eloqua, Lattice Engines, and most recently at Path Factory before I joined InVision. I live on the North Shore of Massachusetts, up by the beach. Can't wait to get my boat in the water. And I have 2 small children. They keep me pretty busy when I'm not doing this.
I love it. Where do you, when you can be on the boat and out in the water, where do you guys like to go to up around the North Shore?
So we live in Essex, on the Essex River, so we can put our boat in right there. We've actually been waiting it out to make sure there was going to be no restrictions on boating, which our harbor master has approved boating moving forward, which is great. And so within about a 15-minute drive, we can be on the backside of Crane Beach in Ipswich or at Winger Chic in Gloucester. Yeah, it's really great.
Love it. Well, if you ever feel inclined to come down to the city and pick me up, I will happily get out on Eastie Pier.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So up next, we have my old friend, Will Pringle, who leads the demand generation team at Brandwatch. So a fun fact about Will is actually exceptionally knowledgeable about all things wine related. We've gone to a couple of events together, and I'm always impressed by his knowledge and takeaways. But Will, welcome to today's panel at YOUniverse. Anything else you'd like to share about yourself?
I'm at home like everybody else. That's the thing. Demand gen guy since early on. I was at IBM Netezza for a while. I was at Fuse. I was at Endeca, a longtime Eloqua guy, and now Marketo. I have 3 wonderful daughters. One just turned 16 over the weekend, so that was fun. We had we surprised her actually. We went for a walk at 2 p.m. in the afternoon as a family. We stepped outside the front door, and we heard all these cars honking. And there was a parade that came down the street, about 15 cars of all of her friends, and they had posters and happy birthday Tori and drove by. So like everybody else, we're just trying to make the best of it and trying to make the best of it for our daughters.
I love that. Was that birthday parade something you guys had organized, or just her friends had gotten together?
Yeah, well, they got together and they started to chat, and then my wife got involved, and it kind of all came together.
Oh, I love that. Well, give Tori a huge happy birthday from all of us, although she'll be like, Dad, who are these people?
Will do. I have one more thing to add. Which we were listening to earlier. My wife is a voice singer at college, and or a teacher at college, and she has her voice students doing finals this week. So in the background, if you hear any opera singers singing, that's her and or her students.
I love it.
Right on cue. Perfect.
Yeah, just perfect. All right, so up next we have my friend Sara, who is a senior marketing ops manager over at Cloudera. Tons of 5 to 9 interests, but most importantly, you are a proud cat mom to Bandit.
I should have brought Bandit onto the camera. You can be a little camera shy though.
Is that not Bandit in the background, or?
No, that's apparent. So I learned from my Canadian friends that apparently this cat is from Canada. That's like one of their claims to fame, the cat from this meme.
I just learned something new.
But you just gave me a new idea that I should just like have a close up of Bandit's face as my background. Just start going to work meetings like that.
I love it. Well, Sara, thanks for coming on. Anything else you want to share about yourself before we dive on in?
I feel like that covers a lot of it. If anyone on the line is familiar with The Last of Us, the video game, I'm very excited. They finally announced they're going to release it after like months of delays.
There you go. I haven't heard of it. Should I check it out?
It's a big deal in the PS4 world.
All right. If you invite me into the club, I'm there, girl.
Awesome.
Alrighty. Up next, we have my friend Kimberly, who leads marketing automation and attribution over at, that's not Brandwatch, Bandwidth, excuse us. But outside of work, there is no stopping to relax. A volleyball player. So tell us a little bit more about your volleyball passions there.
Yeah, it's just that. It's a passion, definitely not a career. But it is super fun. And I decided last year for the first summer in North Carolina to go ahead and try out sand volleyball in the middle of 100-degree heat on every Sunday afternoon. And just was like, I don't understand why I decided beach volleyball in North Carolina in August was a good idea. But here we are. It was a blast. And hopefully when all of this is calmed down, I'll be able to play again.
I appreciate your enthusiasm for just picking it up. Awesome.
I feel like your manager just did like a big sigh of relief when Nina corrected that slide. She's like, wait, what?
My brain was like, that's not right.
Yeah, wait, did you quit? You didn't tell us what's happening?
This isn't correct. All right, well, last but most certainly not least, we have the amazing Matt Heinz today, who is going to help us moderate our panel. So Matt's the president of Heiz Marketing, also a brisket cooker extraordinaire. Matt, what have you been cooking up these days now that you're homebound?
Brisket cards. I've been using some of this time to practice brisket. We've also been doing a lot of chicken. We did 35 pounds of bacon a couple weeks ago. Did some spare ribs over the weekend. So really sort of I've got a new sort of larger offset smoker, and so I'm sort of practicing now. We've graduated from we're doing split logs now, just of cherry and apple wood, and it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, I love that. Was this always like a full-blown passion before you were cooking all your meals at home?
No, yes, sort of, but I think it's certainly evolved. I've got between Weber kettle grill in the backyard and the smoker down by the garage, I've got like 7 different outdoor cookers for different types of meat and different cooking. So it's definitely, I don't know why more men don't cook. I mean, fire, knives, meat, like what else do you want? The beauty of like cooking is you have to sit there and tend to it and drink beer with your buddies. So I can talk about Meat-a-Palooza later. I think we're going to hopefully be able to Palooza again this fall. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun.
And just to be clear, I'm like a bandwagon chicken owner. Matt's like a homesteader. Like he's like a full-on, like he's got like a yard full of animals and smoking apparatus. He's like the real deal.
And we've been preparing for shelter in place. Chickens in the full backyard garden. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, in the spirit of that, I am going to happily remove myself and let you 5 powerhouses get on at it. So Matt, feel free to take it away.
Thank you very much. My pleasure for not having my camera on. We've got amazing bandwidth in the office, but here with my wife working, trying to do homeschool, it gets a little bandwidthy. And honestly, this works better because I'm simply the moderator of this session. I'm going to let our 4 panelists shine. And I love the way to set this up because I think the whole point of YOUniverse is that we're talking about putting personal into play. And personally, I mean, I feel like I've gotten to know people in my personal professional network far better over the last few weeks than I did before. I mean, be able to see people's background, to hear wife downstairs. I don't know if anyone else watched much of the week, but to get to look into the homes of managers, to watch Belichick's dog draft picks, it was a lot of fun. So I think to know each other at a personal level is a really big deal. It's a really big opportunity for us to connect at a deeper level with people around us. And that's a today is like, we turn always been a perpetual demand into our organization sales team and do it with more humanity, do it with more empathy, do it meaning about buying committees and buying journeys, applying some data and some analytics and some precision to that, but allowing some humanity and empathy and sort of personal touches. Part of that is so, as Nina mentioned, I've got a whole bunch of questions I'd love to ask the panel and get some insights on. I will be watching that as well. If you want to ask the panel, I would love to throw those into chat, and I'll make sure we get to those as well. But let's talk about sort of, you were at Eloqua. You've been sort of in the sort of MarTech and marketing out space for a very long time, and you've seen, I mean, we've kind of seen the evolution of demand last few years, last few weeks, seen it even come even further in terms of personalization. I think a couple of years ago, personalization was, sort of an emerging. Now it feels very much like table stakes that we emerge out of this COVID period. I feel like anyone who's not doing personalization at a deeper level is going to start to find, what are you seeing and what are the recommendations you have for marketing to figure out how to incorporate this?
I'm like squinting to try to hear you, which is a bad sign. You're definitely a little glitchy, Matt, just so you know. Matt's got some bandwidth issues, but I'm pretty sure I got the question. So yes, personalization's come a long way. Like in the early days, it was like, ooh, we inserted your company name in an email. That was like, or like, I remember back in the early days at Eloqua using like activity-driven content to personalize based on industry or something like that. I think with the advent of account-based marketing, you see, especially as companies evolve toward even more like one-to-one strategies, things getting far more personalized. And I think it's out of necessity. I just think like, it's a noisy market. Depending on who you sell to, I spent the better part of my career selling to marketers, and marketers are relentlessly sold to and prospected into. And so it's very, very hard to cut through the noise. And so it becomes very important. It's really interesting for me now. I'm in a company that is a bigger company than I've ever worked at, and has a different set of challenges than I've ever faced before, where a lot of our where a lot of our revenue comes from our existing base. So it's about, expansion, upsell, renewal, and marketing trying to drive impact there. That means account-based marketing is a huge part of it. And it has to be, for our largest accounts, like unbelievably personalized. I think it's funny because I remember like in the early days of account-based marketing, hearing John Miller talk about like what it should look like. And I remember getting like stressed out, being like, who can do that? No one can do that. You can't have a like individual marketing plan for all of your accounts. And it's been really cool to watch ABM take shape at InVision, because what we have done is created a strategic marketing segment for our biggest accounts that we're really trying to move the needle on from an expansion perspective. And every single one of those accounts has a one-to-one strategy. I mean, we have a programs plan on a monthly basis. We will do a newsletter just for your account. We will do a webinar just for your account. We will run a screening of one of our films just for your account. It's a heavy lift, I won't lie, but I think that at the end of the day, when you get into that long-term existing relationship with a customer and you're really trying to make it bigger, there's only one option. You can't, that mass marketing, one size fits all, even one to few kind of thing doesn't really work as well. It really has to be like tailored to the account and also like what you're trying to get that account to do. So it's been really fun to, be a part of that and see account-based marketing happen in a way that I actually never thought was possible. So that's been my experience lately.
Thank you for that. Squinting, so maybe not.
You're that's my cue to you. I'll just squint and you'll know.
Just squinting. Really apologize, guys. I'm
just
gonna do everything.
Close my eyes for the whole thing.
No, I'm gonna do everything I can to try this better. But one you mentioned, you used as the heavy lift of doing more personalized marketing, and I think a lot of marketers forever have focused on efficiency. How do I generate the most cost? How do I generate more efficient? And for your best accounts, that may not actually be most efficient. It may be most effective. Will, can you talk about like what it means to actually sort of prioritize the overall account opportunity, maybe prioritize as much on efficiency, but on getting most impact from those bigger target accounts, even if it costs more marketing spend to get to want to go?
Sure. Yeah, I'm with Elle here. I got most of what you said, but we're all in this together. Yeah, I'd say most companies and most people that are doing what we do now, they have to get the foundational stuff down to start, right? Before you can start to layer in all the custom stuff, and some people consider the fun stuff, you really have to have the foundational stuff. So a couple of years ago, I was talking to Tony Jaros at Serious Decision Summit, and I leaned over to him and I say, the best stuff you guys ever did was the demand waterfall and, naming MQL and all that stuff. And he laughed. And of course, he's done a lot since then, and they had done a lot since then. But really, we have to have that foundational stuff, putting SLAs in place, having alignment between marketing and sales, aligning on your industries, and then ultimately, like you said, aligning on target accounts. So a simple example of that was when I arrived at my previous company, the head of sales was saying, nobody knows who we are. You need to tell everybody, who we are. And my response was, well, there's 30 million companies in the United States, and you're just picking up the phone at random and calling them. I can't get to them, all 30 million, before you do. But if I knew who you were calling before that, and we could align on that, then I could get to them first. And oh, that made sense. So we then put together a list of target accounts. Once we had those target accounts, we had the strategy behind it. We as a marketing organization, as a demand gen team, put all of our efforts then in focusing on those accounts, and that started to work. As time passed, people knew about what we were doing more and more. Once we were aligned on that and going to market, then it became about the personalization stuff, like Elle was talking about, and finding intent signals and being able to inform your sales team at your target accounts. Somebody just had an activity at your target accounts. Somebody just did something, whether it be through Bombora or G2 Crowd, or a lot of the other intent signal vendors that are out there. Tech Target, Priority Engines, one of my favorites. You need to be able to start to provide this type of insight to your sales team and help them so that they know somebody just had an action. And we thought we were so smart at that time in 2017, when we actually kind of completed this massive project. We thought we were, ahead of the game. We won the Serious Decisions ROI Award that year for demand creation for our target account strategy. And about a year later, we looked at each other and we said, we were doing it wrong. And what we realized was, of all of the target accounts, for every 100 target accounts we had, 85 of them weren't buying this year, 85%, right? 15% were buying this year, because people that were buying our stuff would buy every 7 years on average. So even though we had the target account strategy and we were putting all of our money behind that target account strategy, trying to get to all of those accounts, 85% of it weren't buying this year. So it would have been much better for us to then look at intent signals and be able to pick up who of the 100 are actually interested right now. So the analogy was, everybody needs to buy a car, but not everybody's going to buy a car this year. So if you can all of a sudden, hey, somebody's in the market for a car, put all of your energy behind going after them, all 100% versus just the 15%, you're going to get a lot more. And that's done through the intent signals.
I love that story. Thank you for that. And I don't know if you can hear me better. I don't see Elle squinting. I have switched over to the phone. So it's not perfect audio, but it's better. Okay. I got some thumbs up. That's good.
Way better.
Thank you for that. And Well, I don't know. So, you know what? It's we're doing the best we can here. So the I want to talk a little bit about something you mentioned, Will, around, you know, prospects buying now versus prospect buying later. And there's two parts of that, right? There's the understanding intent signals of who's in market right now, like who actually is likely to buy. And it's especially important right now as priority lists shrink, and as some prospects may have a desire but not necessarily budget, and so you can't keep bugging them for getting your proposal back if they just have budgets that are frozen. But Kimberly, can you talk about the difference between, you know, and when we're thinking about these complex deals, these deals that take months, if not quarters, to get done? You know, in the federal government, we're talking about Olympic cycles to get deals done. The deals that aren't going to get done today, you still want to invest in those. You still want to invest in building trust and credibility, and especially right now, I know, Elle, you do a lot of gardening. Like, you're not going to grow tomatoes in winter in Essex, right? And no matter how much you want tomatoes in the winter, you're not going to get them. But there's things you can do to condition the soil and to do fertilizer and to prepare your starts to get ready for the tomatoes when they're ready to buy. So, Kimberly, how do you sort of create a strategy for those people that you think are ready to engage right now and continue to invest using data, using intent signals, and using personalization for the deals that will happen later?
Yeah, that's a great point. So to go around this whole theme of you, right? You are there to help them ultimately. So this is your potential customer or your current customer, no matter what it is. You want to remind them that you're there when they need you. So sending them information on product updates, new releases, that kind of thing, just so that they know, hey, we have this new thing, you might not be ready to buy, or you might not be ready to do anything else. Your budget might be frozen, but this is what we have. So the message is really important, and especially at a time like this. So we've all seen the emails that come out that make us cringe a little bit about like, hey, you should buy from us right now because this pandemic. And it's like, I'm not thinking about that. Nobody wants to be sold to. If you were to ask a room full of people, like, who likes being sold to? So how do you change that message, and how to use that data based on what you're currently seeing and based on what you've been seeing in the past to really focus on the people and focus on when do they buy, how do they buy, how do they like to be communicated with? So looking at email data, just any data with, luckily with Alice, you can see like, when do they accept a gift? When do they view the gift? How do they do it? And using all of that information to tailor it to the people. So at Bandwidth, we do a lot of that custom stuff, and we're all about our customer as well. So focusing on all of the products that we have and how it ultimately helps them. So changing the message and using that data to just further refine that message as well.
Nice. And I think, Sara, I want to have you talk a little bit about sort of the limitations of data sometimes in making that possible. I think, data it sometimes is a starting point for coming up with the right message, but I'm curious to get your feedback on sort of where and how does data help to inform a better experience, and what, where do you see limitations of data, and then what you have to sort of build on top of that?
I think the easiest data to use, honestly, is things like Bombora, or things that you can purchase, right? Because their whole business is making clean data that you can use. I think the trickiest part is, internally always keeping clean data. It becomes really like a sales and marketing partnership, and it's super important. And what I try to evangelize is that it's better to kind of put the work up front and really build that into your culture, rather than kind of waiting until like a moment like this, right? When you need to go to market thoughtfully and be really targeted in your messages and correct in your messaging, and people are scrambling to try to fix their data. I think there's a lot of that I see going on right now, because you don't want to send a message to someone that's incorrect when it's almost like adding salt to the wound. Like, they're already super busy, they're already worrying about their family and all this other stuff that's going on, and then you're like sending them some kind of outreach cadence that's not even correct or not even about them. So I think data is really the foundation of the entire thing. And actually was thinking, when you were asking Elle the first question about personalization, I think we've moved on from personalization like within its own bubble to like predictive personalization. So we aren't just trying to say, oh, like, Elle's into marketing, so let's send her something about marketing. Now we're like, okay, Elle's thinking about like maybe social marketing right now. can we look at her web activity? Can we look at other data to figure out what's the next thing that she's going to be interested in, or that her group's going to be looking to invest in? So I think that the game is continuing to be kind of pushed forward. And I think a situation like this really just, like, I think the stars who kind of prepared for this are shining and taking a lot of kind of like the airwave bandwidth, and the people who did not prepare are desperately trying to catch up. So I hope that it's a lesson in trying to plan for things like this. I know from a marketing operations perspective, we try to really build in kind of like, okay, if the worst thing happens, how is this process going to work? Or how can we, like take this engagement studio, like this nurture down overnight? Like, we don't want to create things in a way where we have no control over the branding if something were to suddenly change and we were to have to go offline or change the messaging to meet the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I love what you're saying there. You mentioned a couple things I think worth reiterating. One is the idea of predictive personalization, right? Not just leveraging the data you have in the past, but understanding based on habits and behaviors what someone's likely to want moving forward. I think especially right now, I mean, the best companies aren't taking 6 weeks to create their "we hope you're okay in these troubling times" emails, because those are about 4 weeks too late. But the better you can understand what you think your customers are going to be asking for and need 2 weeks from now, you might actually have your answer when they start asking the question. You also mentioned sort of, what you want to have ready for next time. And I think there's an awful lot we're learning right now that is helping us kind of crisis-proof future marketing, right? To think about, okay, if and when this happens again, whether that's, we're going to try to go back to a semi-normal this summer, but maybe there's a second wave in the fall, and maybe there's selective social distancing and it gets a little weird again. Like, do we do something differently then? How do we prepare for that in the same way that hopefully governments are preparing for testing and other things, moving forward? Elle, I'm just curious, as you sort of reflect on what you've learned over the years, especially things you've been working on right now, are there already some lessons that you're seeing in terms of how you're doing demand now that would maybe have been different before, or things you might recommend people use moving forward?
I mean, look, this is not a scientific approach at all, but my mantra in life has always been that done is better than perfect. And so, it's funny, I joined a company that I think was heavy on the perfection scale because it's just such a design and brand led company. And I've worked really hard to push a lot more agility into the DNA around let's move fast. And I mean, having come from very early stage startups where time is never your friend, like that has always been, you get none of the benefits from the things that you don't do, right? So you got to be willing to put stuff out there and iterate on it. And I'm really glad that I joined InVision when I did, because I think it's served us well in the past several weeks. We've had to make some very last minute calls and do some pretty last minute pivoting. We actually have a really engaged and robust community that we run. We had probably 40 live and field events planned for the first half of the year. And the community wants those experiences. Like, they crave the interaction with their peers and the networking and the things that the community delivers. And so it was very quickly okay, well, we can't do it live. How do we do it virtual? And how do you do it in a way that it doesn't feel like some crappy substitute? How do you do it with music and with branded backgrounds and with breakouts and with fun, things to icebreakers and ways to keep people engaged? And I think that focus on agility is what really kind of helped us in this situation. We've been able to pivot all of those live experiences to virtual. And of course, now everyone's like, ooh, maybe we should just do these virtual moving forward. I'm like, all right, slow down. There is a time and a place for a face-to-face event. But I think we also you can't just take something like a live event and be like, let's make it a webinar, because you will lose a lot of the things that make face-to-face special. So I think we've had to kind of find this blended place of how do you do it fast and get it done and drive the experience quickly? Because now there's going to be a glut of other, experiences out there for people to try to take advantage of. But how do you marry that with what's our heritage of doing incredible experiences that are beautiful and branded and wonderful? And how do you fuse those two things together? So, I mean, I just think look, there's something to to speed. And I've always believed that. Like, I just, I've always worked in environments where like you had to do stuff fast and you had to do a lot of stuff and you had to do a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error. I think that in this moment is pretty critical for marketing teams.
Yeah, I would agree. Hey, reminder, we've only got about 25 minutes left. So if you've got questions for our panelists, please put those into the chat. We've got a couple coming in, I see already, and we'd love to take a few more. We'll want to have you talk a little bit about adding empathy into your marketing efforts, which I think is something I hope that we see more of moving forward. I hope that across our marketing efforts, as well as our sales efforts, that there's a little more focus on the human behind the buyer. I did an event yesterday with some sales managers, and we were talking about what are the sales management lessons coming out of COVID. Not necessarily how are you pivoting right now and how are you teaching people to sell with empathy today, but what are some lessons today and some best practices that we're going to take forward? And there was a long conversation about, even in B2B, even in complex B2B, even in enterprise sales, there's an opportunity for us to sort of still be humans talking to humans. And so there's the marketing side of that. And then there's, in complex deals, how we teach and integrate with our sales counterparts to provide that empathy and humanization as well. I think humanization is the word. I'm going to go look it up. But Will, could you talk a little bit about kind of what you think that looks like and what that needs to evolve into to be more successful moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm fortunate enough. I work for a company, Brandwatch, and I've only been on board for about 4 months now. Brandwatch has a background. I'd say they're as a personality, they are a very empathetic company. They are, they help the world in a lot of things that they do, and they've had that DNA for a long, long time. So when COVID-19 kind of hit us, and we all had plans to do other things. We had in-person events that we wanted to do. We had sporting events. We had dinners. We had all these things on our calendar as marketers that all of a sudden we couldn't do. And it probably took us, and I was telling my team earlier how proud I am of them, it probably took us the shortest amount of time to pivot that I could have imagined. And part of it was the empathy that they have inside for what they wanted to do for our customers during this time. And again, I'm fortunate enough to have a product that can help companies. It allows them to research like what's going on in their industry socially, and then see where all the trends are. And we immediately built a COVID-19 dashboard and made it available for free to all of our customers. We started a daily COVID-19 bulletin, and we do that for free, and we provide that. And we have 3 analysts working on that full time just to produce that for our customers and prospects, because it was something good for the world that we wanted to do. And then we have a weekly COVID-19 insights report, which is this dynamic report which we make available. We have a whole team of people. It costs us about $100,000 a week just to produce that, and it's at no charge to everyone. We now have 10,000 people that are getting that each week. We sent one out yesterday. So why I'm proud of that is because the feedback has been tremendous. People appreciate that we're helping, and it is genuinely, we're really doing it out of our feeling on what's going on in the world. But I would say, as a campaign, COVID-19 is the I could have never hoped for a better campaign and better results doing anything else. And I know it's affected people in a negative way, and me and my family as well. But as a campaign that kind of brought everything together and got the kind of response that we're getting, it's a lesson in what we should always be doing, not just at times like these, right? We should always be helping our customers. And have a
amen to that. And I think you've mentioned something you're doing for your customers, and I have seen an awful lot of companies accelerate the investments they're making on customer marketing, not just prospect marketing. And I think there's an awful lot of things we're doing from a content, from a value perspective that can benefit both sides. Kimberly, I'm curious to get a sense for sort of your team, how you guys have sort of been balancing sort of customer marketing and prospect marketing. And what are some things you're seeing either inside your company as well as sort of things you're exposed to as a buyer, as a consumer, that are good best practices for personalization and value add to customers across the entire customer lifecycle?
Yeah. So I'll take it kind of from 2 angles, and I'm going to try real hard to use the word humanization since you've confirmed it is indeed a word. So yeah. What we do at Bandwidth, and I kind of want to echo what Will was saying, I say, gosh, our team does a really great job, and I have to say that just kind of toot our own horn, but they always put customer first, right? So that's just kind of who we are as a company. And so for us, it's just keep going on our mission, but also taking a step back. And this is for anyone ever. It's like, are you giving them a solution to their problem? Do you know what their problem is? If you're going to go pitch somebody and you haven't even thought of their problem, don't pitch. Just don't pitch unless you know exactly what you're trying to help them with. I don't think it's that easy to make a sale. And that kind of comes from personally being sold to. Not that I know sales, and I'm not going to pretend it's not hard, and I'm not going to pretend, especially during this time, that it's not really difficult. But even taking that extra, 10 minutes, an hour to just kind of research what could somebody's problem really be, and how can I just focus on that message right now. So we've pivoted a little bit to just make sure that what we're talking about is helping them. Every message, every email, every phone call, everything that we put out, it's about them. It's not about us. It's about them. How can we help you? We're here. What can we do for you? So just really the message is the baseline of all of the stuff that we're trying to do right now. And yeah, there's data to back it up, but it's all about that message and that humanization right now. And I agree 100% with Will, like this is how we should always be and how we should be moving forward as well.
Love it. Love it. Sarah, there's a couple questions that have come in around sort of data and what data to use as doing this. And clearly, like, not every data point is equal. Not every data point is equally valuable in creating a personalized experience. Can you talk about kind of what data you have found most useful in either creating personalized experiences, or to your point around predictive personalization, what insights have been most efficient at creating that sort of predictable model and creating sort of some actions, whether it's in an automated way or whether it's through, a salesperson following up to provide sort of some acceleration of that personalized impact?
I think the key really is to harness all of the data that you can. I know that at Cloudera, we try to really bring all of our data sources from all places. So we have like a portal called My Cloudera that customers can log into, and they can interact with each other and post questions. And it's kind of like there's some forum capability too. And so we'll even harness data like that to get a sense of, what is someone really interested in? It's one thing to have someone fill out a form. It's another thing to see them post a lot about a certain topic. We also look at things like Bombora data. I think if you take any of these pieces of data by themselves and try to action something, it can be misleading. Like, for example, Bombora, someone could be searching a certain platform because they just happen to have it at work and maybe they hate it. So they might not have any affinity to the product, but they might just be like, oh, I hate this thing, I have to figure out how to use it. Or they could be trying to research it to figure out how to convince their boss to replace it. So I think if you take any one piece of data and try to personalize, it can be misleading. What we try to do is pull them together to create a picture, and then even run some machine learning. We're very lucky to have data scientists who will run machine learning on that data to try to create like a real persona and profile around the activity. So I think it's really a balance around, their activity data, who they are, and then even things like social, like something that I appreciated. I actually got reached out to by Alice, I want to say like a year ago, and they had scraped, this is back when I had a bunch of like unicorn branding on my personal branding. They managed to scrape unicorn from my LinkedIn and then go and send me like a unicorn mug. So sometimes even something as simple as that, we don't have to make it rocket science. It's more about creating like a warm personal moment, but not in a way that feels forced or like someone's creeping on you.
Yeah, I agree with that. There was a question, Elle, earlier in the thread here about sort of how you set up a marketing team for individual accounts. Like, you have marketing managers assigned to specific accounts. I'm also curious what the economics looks like on that, because I mean, obviously, if you're going to put more specific resources on specific accounts, that's not the most efficient spend from a get most leads at the lowest possible cost standpoint. But then how do you pencil out sort of the resources that you're willing to put against some of those bigger high potential deals?
Yep. Well, first of all, we apply that strategy on a one-to-one basis to our highest ARR accounts where there's the biggest opportunity for upside and expansion. So it makes sense to invest more there. We are now working on some things that kind of scale. And we've really tried to build a high degree of scalability, even though it's a lot of bespoke stuff. So there's sort of a menu of options for our strategic account reps to choose from. Honestly, the resourcing is very intensive up front. There's actually for every single strategic account rep a plan on a per account basis. And that started with someone sitting down with each one of those people. And they both had to invest quite a bit of time in this process to say, what are the key challenges you have at this account? Is it seat utilization? Is it access to executives? Is it expansion to new personas? Like, let's map out all the problems. And then based on that, let's build a plan month by month for the kinds of programs we're going to execute to help you knock those down leading up to a potential renewal. So there is a lot of upfront work, I won't lie. And it's mostly people work, it's resources. I will say most of the programs that we're running into that segment are not costly from a dollars perspective. They do utilize most of the things that we have at our disposal. Some of the stuff is like, could we create a really compelling story about how this customer is using our product used to internally evangelize, for example? Could we run a bespoke webinar? So a lot of it is using our own tech stack, our own resources, but it's a heavy people resources lift. From a team perspective, there is a strategic account marketing team that's all they do. And it's right now 1, 2, 3, 4 people-ish, 4, almost 5. Some of those people are really focused on kind of operational stuff. Now, they also work very closely with our lifecycle team and with our ops team to stand up some of these programs. I think the best way to do it, what I was trying to avoid with this was having every single rep wanted their own special set of stuff, and it was different. So there is a menu. It's like, these are the options available to you based on the problems you've said you have. But we are willing to support a lot when it comes to actually, running kind of bespoke programs, as long as they fall within those guidelines. But yes, you have to staff it for sure. And you have to sell it. I mean, you really have to evangelize the benefit to the sales rep of spending that upfront time to get really specific about the challenges they have in the account to then get the benefit on the program side. It is the most, in my career at this point, the most perfect version I've seen of account-based marketing on a one-to-one basis. I think it's working really well. We're driving a lot of value. And so far, it's not crushing us. I think I can see a place where it could become crushing. And that's when you have to think about adding more resources or adding more scale to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left before we're going to hand it back to Nita to wrap us up. There's a bunch of questions that have come in, and thank you for that. And hopefully we can address as many of these as we can. And then if we can't get to some of these, we can put that into Q&A somewhere online. I'm signing Elle up to do that right now because it sounds like she's got plenty of time to get that done between homeschool and boating and everything else. I'm going to throw this out to anybody just in the interest of time. Budgets aside, which is a bit of an interesting caveat, but I think budgets can be arbitrary sometimes. But what's one piece of technology, one piece of maybe emerging technology that you could lean into to help scale your brand's ability to be personalization? What would that be? I mean, in addition to Alice, right? Because I think we're all a lot off on sort of Alice. And maybe there's a sort of a way that you would sort of do an Alice on steroids as part of this as well. But I'm just curious, is there something you've invested in? Or is there something on your wish list that you would really like to invest in that you think could really jumpstart and accelerate what we're talking about here today?
I have an easy answer to this one because it's such a recent thing for us, but we're just in the final stages of implementing Pendo. And that's key for us because so much of what we're trying to do is drive very discrete next best actions within our product. This is how we drive adoption, usage, monetization of features. And the cool thing is you can get down to like pretty specific cohorts of show me anyone who's done this, but not this. And you can get really personalized in terms of what you're asking that person to do versus like they log in and there's just like random guides and tutorials. So for us, I think that's really key. We're even playing around now with like kind of customized, personalized experiences for a specific account, for example. And that was just like a critical must-have given sort of the scope of our product and the things we're trying to do on the buyer journey. So that's probably the leading one for me.
Yeah, and I would say kind of to echo what Sara was saying, but just machine learning and AI, because you can do a lot of that upfront work in account-based marketing and strategic focus, but having that additional help to kind of narrow down and get a niche audience and not over market, if you will, if you're always blasting the same audience and you don't really know if they're your target. But using some of that data that's done by a machine and really trying to figure out, hey, who's going to come to this webinar? Who's going to attend this event? Who's more likely, based on just a bunch of different firmographic and demographic information? Utilizing that on top of your personalization can really be key.
I'd echo that as well. So there's some technology that I haven't used yet, Matt, to your point. It's like, what would I like to use? People AI. I've been it's captured my imagination. This company came out and said, it spoke to my heart. They said, you've been trying to convince all these sales guys to put all their information in Salesforce for 15, 20 years. We have the answer. They don't have to. And they scrape everything from Gmail or whatever email server you have, all those communications, who they're inviting into the meetings, other people follow on, and they put it all in Salesforce in a nice organized way, or so it seems. And I would love to use that technology at some point, because it helps with what Sara was saying around data maintenance. I think it's the most underrated thing that we in marketing think about. And the companies that lead in their markets are the companies that have the best data. The second thing is the AI thing that Kimberly was talking about, and that is Conversica. We had implemented it at our last company. We're implementing it where I am now. And that's AI that sits there. When you have huge volumes of leads like we have right now, like I was talking about, Conversica is perfect because she reaches out, she figures out which ones are serious, and then she passes those on. It's like an AI, lead scoring for an inside sales team. So those are the two that come to mind.
That's awesome. Sara?
I think for me, it depends upon, honestly, like what stage the company is at. If the data is not in a good place, I would definitely invest in some kind of data kind of hygiene tool, like demand tools or something, to kind of help pull that data together. If I had my data together, I would get a DMP, like Adobe DMP or something, to kind of help power putting out those personal messages and ads and things like that. And then honestly, one of the biggest kind of places I've been looking at lately is just sales intelligence. So kind of go off of what Will said, like a Gong or something to kind of get data around what happens once we pass the lead to sales. I feel like sometimes it becomes a black box. Like Will said, if the sales rep doesn't write kind of what happened in the meeting into Salesforce, and we really kind of have no idea, like, is the messaging confusing people? Are they coming through on the wrong impression about something? Or what are they interested in? What is the opportunity for potentially an upsell down the road? So I think definitely kind of like the sales intelligence space.
Got it. Just a couple more minutes here. I did want to address Prithvi's question here. He's asking about lead nurturing programs, and most of our conversation today has been about personalization, including assigning specific campaigns to specific accounts, specific marketers to specific accounts. And so we're talking about almost kind of bespoke, very personalized stuff here. Many of us still have drip campaigns in place. We still have people that are getting these sort of one-to-many campaigns, and we may not have time for everybody to chime in on this, but I would love to get a couple people to give feedback on how do you find the balance between continuing to do drip campaigns or newsletters that may go to a lot of people with the same type of content, versus having that bespoke. I mean, do you tier it by value of the account, by engagement? Do you turn people on and off to certain feeds? Whether you're doing this yourself or whether you just have an idea of what you wish you were doing, we'd love to get a couple perspectives.
I would say like first things first would be to just watch the analytics. I feel like nurture has become kind of one of those like set and forget it things because of how they kind of first were introduced into the market. So definitely watch and see how people are reacting to your content. If you see people unsubscribing at a certain point, or if you see them clicking a CTA at like a super high rate on a piece of content, that in my opinion is the best feedback on whether this is resonating with your audience or not. And especially like I saw that they mentioned, because right now is a time to be very patient and slow. I think if you start seeing a huge drop off or bounce rate on your nurtures, just turn it off and kind of like check out where you think the issue may be, or if you need to reapproach it, rather than just trying to kind of let it go out there and just hurt your email sending reputation.
And I'll just add, like, I think it's possible. First of all, I mean, you're always going to have you know, even at a company like ours where we have a strong install base that we're going to do really bespoke things for, we still have a whole universe of people that are in sort of white space. And, you know, I still think those strategies are important, but I think it's possible to have a one-to-many strategy and a nurture that's still relatively personalized. I mean, I don't think you should have, I've never been a proponent, and I'm like kind of an old school demand gen marketer of like one nurture for everybody. I still think that they should be based on personas, stage of the funnel, last action, like whatever it is. I mean, I'm a fan of having lots and lots and lots of different nurture tracks, just because I think that you can dial it in, even with broader audiences. I totally agree. I have seen no point in letting something run that's just wasting people's time and cranking out emails for no reason. And so I think you got to keep an eye on that stuff. But I mean, I still believe that you can have a nurture that serves the purpose of driving sort of programmatic engagement and still have it be fairly tailored to the audience that you're trying to get after. You know, I think it's a mistake to think you can have one program for everybody.
Got it. All right, we do have a couple more minutes. I want to do a quick lightning round. We've been talking about personalization, humanization. I want to get an insight from each of you, you know, just in, 30 seconds or less. And the question is simple. What is as we're all working from home with streaming lessons behind us and underneath us and homeschooling this and that, and I mean, it's all very, very different for the last few weeks. What is something that you don't miss, that you don't want to go back to? We've been talking about sort of like, we'll never go back to the old normal. Well, that's actually maybe good. Maybe there's things about the old normal we didn't like, right? We were lamenting the fact that we lost our trade show schedule for Q2. Well, secretly, we all hate a lot of those trade shows. It's a pain in the ass to do a lot of trade shows. So maybe finding a better way of driving pipeline and building, and networking is a good thing. So would love to just get a quick, what's something that you don't miss from the old normal that you think will be eliminated or be better as we move forward? Sara, I see you. I'll start with you. So I think you're the first off mute.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much like, I hope we get rid of it, but more of like, I see it as an improvement, which is allowing or like making it people able to tune into even in-person events virtually, because as someone who's been on like the in-person events kind of world tour, like it can get rough. It can get expensive, it can just get to be a little bit too much. And I hate it when companies are like, oh, well, if you're not there in person, you can't tune into any of it, even things that make sense that they could just put a camera in the room and you could watch. So I hope that it's not so much like I won't miss it. It's more of I hope that we continue to think about, how do we include a bigger audience? It might not be perfect, like maybe the audio won't be perfect or whatever, but at least attempt to allow people to consume more content where they feel comfortable doing so.
Yep, got it. Love it. Thank you.
I think I have one that fits pretty perfect with this whole universe thing. I don't ever want to go back to a place where we don't recognize each other and our coworker as human. Just there's a lot that people do at home that you don't see when you're in the office all day, the parenting, the chicken raising, the whatever it may be. There's a lot. And so just having that respect and that empathy, even not just for your customers and your prospects, but for your coworkers, and just understanding like everyone's got their thing, but we respect each other and we're going to get it done and we're here for each other. I think going forward with that mindset would be pretty great.
Yeah, I'll plus one that. I mean, InVision was always remote. We're a remote company. And so in some ways it was actually tough because our lives people were trying to transition to remote and we were like, nope, just business as usual. And so, but it was like a heightened sense of empathy and like, you don't see people trying to rush their kids out of the room anymore. It's like, let your kids walk in the room. They're home all day. Like this is going to happen. So I agree with that. I think another thing, I talked about the virtual event thing. I could see us actually having a lot more, and again, the devil's in the details in terms of how you try to deliver a virtual experience and make it feel fun and interesting and engaging and cool. Like, I think you have to go the extra mile, but I'd like to see more of that carry through. My CMO, Brian Cardin, who also I know Will used to work with Brian, was joking about how he always missed like the one little when all the spring flowers bloom because he was always at Serious Decisions that week. And now he's like, I'm home and I can see the flowers. I'm like, well, that's kind of a cool thing, right? So I like that. The one thing I also think is like, it really unified people. It has really brought, and not to say that we weren't before, but like, the amount of urgency it created around like, we got to band together, we got to get stuff done, and we got to do it quick. I feel like in some ways, like it really heightened that kind of experience. And I hope that we can hang on to that. And I feel like there's like, the world is having this moment. It's not just like, you know, camaraderie at work, but like, I sort of love that part. And I hope that we can keep on, you know, being super unified and superhuman.
I agree. Will, bring us home.
All right. Well, I'd say that's an easy answer. My commute is what I'm not looking forward to. I would leave that behind so quick. So yeah, every day I was on the train. It's over a 2-hour commute into Boston and back. And, you know, if you think about it, you know, if companies said, okay, tell you what, you know, work from home more and we'll take an hour of that time and we'll give you another hour of that time, it's a win-win. And I think most CEOs, what they thought was, if we allow people to work from home more, productivity will go down. And I think what many are discovering is productivity has gone up. So we were on a call the other day and our CEO, somebody said, when we get back in the office, and he said, if. And they said, well, when we get back in the office, he said, if. And his point was, he probably wasn't talking about the headquarters, but we have lots of offices all around the world. And there's certainly efficiencies now that the company's found that I don't think they want to let go. So I'm hoping that I'm part of that and get to work from home more.
I love it. Well, I want to thank our panelists today. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you putting up little technical difficulties on my end, but we were able to make it work and got a lot of great insights and great questions. So hopefully everyone's benefited from this. And Nina, back to you.
All right. Well, Matt, I have to ask a question to you. What's one thing that you're hoping we'll leave in our rearview mirror or that will just continue to be refined and enhanced?
Well, I think the learning about each other individually. I loved Elle's comment about, like, you know, don't rush your kids out of the room. Just like, you know, learn about what makes people tick and care about that and value that. And look, you could argue that some of these things make things a little less efficient. And the fact that we had some technical snafus at the beginning of this wasn't ideal and I wasn't excited about it, but we laugh about it. That's life. That's work. That's the path. So I think that's the thing that I hope that we continue to do.
I completely agree with you. I think, you know, just to wrap it all up, it's that relatability is at an all-time high right now. And I think that's what's allowing us to get closer to our buyers and to our prospects and to our partners. And that's what I hope doesn't change and only continues to get enhanced. So with that, I want to thank all of you, Kimberly, Will, Sara, Elle, and of course, Matt, for joining us today as we talk about what is going to usher us into this next era of demand generation. So, you know, without further ado, if you have any follow-up questions, you can happily find all 6 of us on LinkedIn. But thank you all for spending your afternoon with us. And last but certainly not least, tomorrow is our last session of YOUniverse. So hopefully everybody who's gotten the opportunity to dial in has had some fun this week. And we're really going to kind of put a nice wrapper, a nice bow on this. And Greg Siegel, our founder and CEO, is going to sit down with Sansi Hanal, who's the co-founder of Quala. And they're really going to talk about how this concept of personal experience, which is what we talked a lot about today, how PX is really intersecting within CX right now, and how actually it's a series of interactions that your customers have when they're a prospect to when they become a customer to when they start to evangelize your brand out in the market. How can you make sure that all of those moments strung together are as relatable, relevant, and respectful as humanly possible? So hopefully you all can tune in tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. But thank you all for dialing in, and stay safe, healthy, and happy.